Alright everybody, I'm super excited about today's video. It's a product that a lot of you guys have been asking us to review. In this video I'm going to review the very popular Riddler 45C tires by WTB, and we got a hold of a pair a couple weeks ago and have been taking it through the ringer. So find out what I like and dislike about the Riddler tire by Wilderness Trail Bikes. Welcome back Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, if you're looking for information and inspiration around bike touring, bike packing, and gravel riding, then definitely subscribe. This channel is for you. So the brand WTB has been knocking it out of the park with some really interesting tires. They've really grabbed a hold of this genre that they're calling Road Plus. And one of the tires that has been creating a ton of buzz is the Riddler 45C tire. So I've been riding with a pair of these tires for the last 2 weeks. I've been taking it on some gravel loops here in Missoula with lots of climbing on paved and unpaved, descending on double track, descending on single track, all sorts of fun terrain with this tire. I feel like I have gotten a good sense of how these tires perform, so I've gathered up all my thoughts and feelings for this final review. So the Riddler tire has a stated width of a nice and plump 45 millimeters. I'll get into the actual measured width on our setup in just a little bit. It weighed in on our scales at about 478 grams, so definitely a little bit on the chunkier side, and a tire that you would want to run tubeless if you're concerned about weight. And speaking about tubeless, it is tubeless ready. It has that TCS marking on the tire. So the tread pattern on the tire is kind of optimized for a fast rolling center, kind of a tighter block pattern in the middle, but it does have added chunkier knobs on the side for better grip when turning and even when climbing. So let's talk about tire installation. The bike I used for this tire test was a 2016 Salsa Warbird, and I mounted the tires on the stock rims. And the rims on the bike, it's kind of unclear if they are tubeless compatible, but I have had good success running the Pan Racer Gravel Kings on them, so I kind of assumed that the WTB tires would be no problem. But I was wrong. I attempted to mount the tire a couple times and it just wasn't holding the bead, so I had to buy a bulk roll of tubeless tape and added 3 more wraps before the bead would finally settle in. So that is one thing to definitely note about this tire. The sidewalls are fairly supple, and this is good and bad. It provides awesome ride quality, but it's gonna be a little bit more particular setting it up tubeless if your rim isn't clearly stated as tubeless compatible. You might have to build up that central channel with more tape and take up that extra slop on the interior of the rim so that it does create a good seal. So I recently got a digital caliper for this review. I measured the interior dimension of the rim, and that came out to about 16.5, which is actually a little bit of a shock because the stated internal dimension is supposed to be 17. And when I mounted the Riddlers on the rim, the width of the tire came out to about 42 millimeters, so slightly less than the stated width of the tire. But I think a lot of this is due to the fairly narrow rim that I was using. So to be fair, WTB recommends rims with an internal diameter of about 20. So the 16.5 was definitely on the smaller side and definitely had an effect on the overall width of the tire. Once I had the tire mounted successfully, it did roll fairly well. One thing you'll notice right off the bat is the tire just looks awesome. There's something about that gum wall that just really gives it a nice classic look. The extra plumpness definitely helps out on rocky terrain when you're descending and you're hitting kind of baby heads. Prior to the Riddler 45Cs, the tires I had on the bike previously were the 40 millimeter Gravel King SKs by Pan Racer. I feel like this is a pretty good comparison because in some ways they're pretty similar. I feel like on the central part of the tire they do have a similar tread pattern. I would say where I noticed the biggest difference between the Gravel King SK was on the loose gravelly climb. I feel like those extra aggressive knobs on the side of the tire really gave me an area to push in while I was climbing, and on a climb where I would usually spin out, the Riddlers held on, gripped well enough, and I was able to go up and over the climb without having the rear tire spin. I think on flatter and on paved terrain, I did feel that the tires were a little bit more sluggish than something like the Gravel King. So that's it for kind of the general overview of the tire. Let's move on to the likes and dislikes I have about the Riddler 45s. So the first big like is the traction. It does provide a little bit more traction than something like the Pan Racer Gravel King without a huge penalty in ride feel. I feel like if you're gonna ride a route that is mostly gravel, let's say 70 to 80%, then this would be the perfect tire for that kind of ride. If you're gonna ride something with a lot more pavement, let's say closer to 50-50, then I think the Gravel King would be the better choice. Another big like is the suspension, especially if you're running it tubeless. I had mine set up. I had about 35 in the rear and about 26 in the front. Going down rocky descents, it was able to buffer a lot of the fist-sized rocks and the roots. It made stuff that definitely would have felt like you were under biking and a little bit sketchy to something a little bit more manageable. So that's it for the likes. Let's move on to the dislikes. And the first dislike is that it can be a tricky tire to mount. If your rim isn't tubeless ready, or if you're unsure, you might encounter problems mounting it. I think this is a function of just a really softer, supple casing on the tire. I found that personally I had to add more tape to my wheel to take up the extra slack and to make an airtight seal. The second dislike is the weight of the tire as well as its performance on paved surfaces. Granted, this tire wasn't designed for lots of road riding. If the roads or the events you ride have a lot of pavement, then this might not be the best tire because you will feel general sluggishness from the added tread and extra rubber. And the last dislike, it's not really a dislike, but it's definitely something you have to be aware of, is that at about 42 to 45 millimeters, it is a wide tire, and it's only now that we're getting bike frames that are designed to fit tires this wide. Even on my Salsa Warbird, the 2016 model, the front fit fine, but the rear was pretty tight. If I encountered any muddy conditions or had any buildup of stuff, it would have stopped the bike dead in its tracks. So if you're interested in a tire like this, I would suggest definitely measuring your clearances, especially in the rear, to make sure it will work. So overall, I feel like this is an awesome tire. If you live in a place where you have quick access to dirt roads, fire roads, single track, then definitely get this tire. But make sure you have a wheel set that is tubeless compatible. So is there anybody out there that has been running the Riddler 45Cs for a longer period of time? How have they held up? Do you still like them? How has the tread pattern held up? Let me know in the comments below. And if you guys have any other specific questions about the tire, about how I set it up, leave those in the comments below. I'll be sure to answer them. And if you like this video, you know what to do. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.